Hi everyone. Today I will be going over the results of a case study that was presented to me for my key assessment project in APN 605, Nutrition Across the Lifespan at the University of New England. My name is Sophia Flesch. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm going to start off by going over an overview of my presentation, which will be composed of 4 different parts. I'll first go over the nutrition introduction, in which I'll give an overview of the patient and the case study, describing their current health condition, any nutritional implications, risk factors, and the goals of nutrition assessment, as well as providing key definitions I will use throughout the presentation as well. Next, I'll go over the entirety of the nutrition assessment process, which includes an in-depth evaluation of objective and subjective data relating to their nutritional intake. Third, I'll describe the nutrition recommendations, goals, and the overall intervention plan created. And lastly, I will share a 3-day meal plan that meets the macro and micronutrient needs of the patient. So to start off with some key definitions, the first one is probably the most important one, which is obesity, which is defined as excessive body fat measuring with a BMI that is greater than or equal 30 kilograms per meter square and above the 95th percentile when plotted on the growth chart. The nutritional implications of obesity lead to my next definition later in life, which is non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. And these are diseases which are not transmissible directly from one person to the next. So examples can include, chronic kidney diseases, most heart diseases and cancer, strokes, Parkinson's, etc. The next definition I'll go over is a body mass index, or BMI, which is an index that correlates total body fat content, or percent body fat, as an acceptable measure of body fatness in both children and adults. Continuing on with BMI, the calculation is to divide their weight in kilograms by their height in meters squared. And probably the most important aspect of BMI is the BMI classifications. There are a total of 6 denoted on the slide in front of you, and there's underweight, normal weight, overweight, and then the 3 classes of obesity. Socioeconomic status, or SES, is an individual's level of income, education, and occupation, and is also an important factor and definition to consider. Excuse me. Food insecurity is also important to consider as well, which is limited or uncertain availability to safe, nutritious foods, or the ability to acquire them in socially acceptable ways. This also can occur with individuals who are living in a food desert, which is typically an urban area where it is difficult to purchase safe and nutritious foods. The next definitions I'll go over are the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, growth charts, which help the interdisciplinary team to monitor growth and identify any potential health or nutrition-related problems with children and adolescents. And lastly, the dietary reference intakes, or DRIs, are the general nutrient standards for healthy individuals. I did want to note that when I discuss nutrient deficiencies or excessive intakes, I basically mean either greater than 150% of the DRI for excessive intake or less than 75% of the DRI to calculate it as a deficiency. There are 3 different categories for risk factors that are related to obesity, which are either behavioral/environmental, which include just a poor diet, which is, typically one that is high in calories, added sugars, and saturated fat, decreased physical activity or low hydration, and then parental food habits. So how is food perceived in the home? How do the parents eat? How is the mealtime, laid out for the children? Next category is socioeconomic. So with our definitions that we just went over, low socioeconomic status is also associated with obesity in terms of affordability and education. And then the last one is genetic. And a risk factor for obesity, if you have more than one or at least one overweight or obese parent, is also a risk factor. So the goals of nutrition intervention is multifaceted. It includes several members of the interdisciplinary team and aims to diminish overweight and obesity via customized advice, education, goal planning, counseling, and then food and nutrient delivery, which basically means, either by a specific diet, a meal plan, nutrient recommendations, etc. And I'm going to be going over each and every one to hopefully achieve these nutrition interventions throughout the presentation. So to give an overview of our patient, Jane is a 14-year-old female who is obese appearing and referred to us for weight management counseling by her primary care physician. Her weight has been increasing by 10 to 15 pounds each year for the past 6 years, and she's recently progressed into the obese category for a BMI for age. She lives with her parents and 2 younger siblings, and both of her parents are obese. In addition to both of her parents being obese, her mother also presents with hyperlipidemia, and her father presents with type 2 diabetes. Her family did report that they often run out of food and dine at fast food restaurants to save money. So to begin the nutrition assessment, we should look at the vitals that are physically present in front of us. She has her height and weight and calculating to a BMI of 28.0. This falls into the overweight BMI classification. However, when plotted on a growth chart, which you'll see in the upcoming slides, she falls in the 95th percentile, which means that she is obese for the BMI for age. Jane also presents with an elevated systolic blood pressure and a diastolic blood pressure with characteristics of stage 1 hypertension. She has an elevated fasting glucose, low HDL cholesterol, and slightly elevated LDL. As I mentioned in the previous slide, when plotting on the BMI for age CDC growth chart, Jane's age and BMI are in the 95th percentile, which is circled in pink in the slide, indicating that she is obese for her age. For the next 2 growth charts, the stature for age and weight for age, Jane is just above the 25th percentile for stature for age, circled in orange, and in between the 90th and 95th percentile for weight for age. In regards to Jane's intake evaluation, we used her 3-day food diary to calculate average intake and input through a nutrient tracker called Cronometer. We found that she was in excess of total calories by about 500 to 1,000 extra calories per day and is extremely deficient in fiber and several essential minerals and vitamins, which are important for growth and development for the adolescent population. Taking a closer intake on her, or closer look at, her intake evaluation and implications, she is about 660 milligrams above the daily requirement for sodium, which increases the blood pressure and risk of cardiovascular disease. And also due to her family history of diabetes, she is at a higher risk for developing health problems related to sodium consumption. When looking at saturated fat specifically, her consumption is about 13.5% of calories coming from saturated fat, and a total calories from fat is about 41.5%. This exceeds the recommendations for adolescents and is high cause for concern because her 3-day food diary does not present with any healthy fats, which are essential to support optimal growth and development. Also, a diet high in fat increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases and some cancer. She does not have any whole grains in her diet, which likely, shows that she has a fiber and B vitamin deficiency, and these are basically required for healthy GI function. Her fruit and vegetable intake is also very minimal. She has only about approximately 1 serving of fruit per day and 1 to 1.5 servings of vegetable per day, but they're typically the starchy vegetables. This also results in a deficiency in fiber and essential vitamins and minerals needed for growth, such as iron, folate, calcium, potassium, and vitamin D. And it's also important to note that her diet did not have any variety in either fruits and vegetables. Looking at her lab values, her sodium and potassium levels are both within normal range. However, her fasting glucose is slightly elevated, which is indicative of pre-diabetes, and we should continue to monitor. Jane's cholesterol is also within range. However, we should continue to monitor this as well due to her diet history and 3-day food diary. Unfortunately, Jane is very deficient in HDL cholesterol, which is also known as the good cholesterol, and this is likely due to the lack of healthy fats and her sedentary lifestyle. This deficiency is a high risk factor for heart disease, hypertension, and diabetes. Her LDL, or the bad cholesterol, is slightly elevated, and her triglycerides are within range. So the goals of nutrition intervention I've outlined in the next couple slides. One of them is to increase her consumption of whole grains and water while decreasing her saturated and total fat consumption. Another goal is to increase consumption of vitamin and minerals to at least 75% of the DRA for age and gender for the ones listed below. This will be achieved by increasing overall fruit and vegetable intake as well as introducing more variety in her diet as well. I've also made it a goal to increase physical activity to about 60 minutes per day to maintain her sodium consumption from 1,500 to 23 milligrams per day, and to increase her fiber intake to 26 grams per day. Her actual intervention plan, I've inputted on the slide as well. Basically, like I mentioned in the slides previously, it's a multifaceted and customized nutrition plan that I created to address each health concern and provide possible courses of action. I won't read through bullet by bullet, but I will kind of give a summary on each slide. So as you can see on the first one here, it's whole grain consumption. And one of the possible courses of action is to purchase only whole grain carbohydrate items, reduce the frequency of dining out to reduce saturated fat and total fat consumption. Here I've planned water consumption, physical activity, smart snacking, and sodium consumption. Increasing vitamin and mineral intake by increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. I've also mentioned notes about her mealtime environment, limiting screen time, eating as a family, pack lunches, go to the grocery store with your parents, as well as nutrition education resources and teaching how to meal prep as applicable. I've also listed possible courses of action to overcome the barrier of low socioeconomic status. In conjunction, with the nutrient education, I believe that Jane's family would benefit from utilizing a government federal program such as SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or the National School Breakfast or School Lunch Program, where they provide financial assistance to purchase food at approved stores with SNAP, or, ensuring that during the school year, Jane will have nutritionally balanced, low cost, or free breakfast and lunches. And then the last one I mentioned was fiber intake. So to calculate her 3-day meal plan, I first started with the MyPlate guidelines for her age, weight, height, gender, and physical activity level, which are denoted in this slide. So there are 5 different food groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. These next 3 slides will go over each of her meal plan days. So day 1, I did do a lot of variety and, kept her coffee and her sugar and her half and half, the one that she's used to having every day. I also kept sort of the same meal plan cadence. So when she would eat, her 3-day food diary indicated that she had a breakfast, a lunch, a PM afternoon snack, and then dinner. So I did try to incorporate that as well, so it's not drastically changing too much. Here is her day 2. As I mentioned, there's a lot of variety here and stuff that are easily purchased through SNAP benefits as well. And day 3. And then my references that are evidence-based. Thank you.